This message is prohibited.
All right, welcome back to another episode of TabooTalks. I'm your host here, TabooThao, and I have my awesome guest and awesome friend. Do you always go by Dan outside in the workplace?
Yep.
And cool.
Yep.
So this is Dan,
Don't
yeah.
have a pen name.
And so a little bit about this guy. I don't know if I haven't really posted any yet, but I do a little intro for everybody, and so a little bit about this guy, everybody listening in. If you already don't know him, he's kind of like pseudo famous. I would say a B-lister in the Hmong community, and he's a filmmaker, director, directed Ntsuj for Spirits Dawn. You also worked on the other films in there, and I know you from other films that we've done together. So like Andromeda, well not Andromeda, but
Actaeon.
Actaeon,
Yep.
yeah, Actaeon. The Heavenly Archer we did together. Yeah, and then you also have another project coming up. I don't know if you want me to talk about it, unless you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into that later on through the podcast as well. We don't have to dive too deep into it since it's kind of it's a long talk. Yeah,
For sure. So one of the things that I really like about the films that you do, I mean, obviously it's about Hmong culture and like talking about Hmong stories in a new medium. But in the more recent things, don't worry about that. You can still pull it. And the more recent things like Spirits Dawn, the whole thing was about Hmong stories through a spiritual lens, and you also touched on a lot of other topics there. So a couple of the things that I thought were really cool were like brotherhood, almost, and being there for your friends, and like a history of like the times that it was shot in. It was like 1980s.
Yeah. That was like a challenging film because the story, if for those of you who've seen it and haven't seen it, it's based on kind of like the first wave of like when the Hmong refugees arrived in America. So it was supposed to be like a late 60s, early 70s piece. In the story is based in the year 1975. So it was like pretty early on during like the whole phase of like when the Hmong people were arriving in America. So it was kind of like a period piece, but it was really hard because obviously when you make films that are based in like a certain period, you have to just, if there's a car that's like, a 2015 car drives by, it's like your shot's ruined. And that actually happened a bunch of times for us. So
Oh yeah.
making like a film, like a low budget film that's based in like the 70s was like really, really hard for us. But I mean, it's a learning process. And I think that I think that story may not have worked if it was not set during that time. I wouldn't say it wouldn't have worked, but I think it would have been more challenging.
Yeah, I think you would have had to use like a different catalyst, because you used the Vietnam War and what happened back in Thailand and Laos. Spoilers for everybody who didn't watch. But basically, the main character has like I wasn't too sure about this, but he fled, right? He was old enough to remember what had happened.
Yep.
And that's why he has those memories. So he has flashbacks to when the war was happening over there before he moved to America. And I think it still could have worked. You just would have to use something more contextual.
Yeah, and I think that the hard thing is, this is not proven, but the story revolves around like the Vietnam War, and also it revolves around the idea of the Hmong men who were like dying in their sleep. So those two things are, I wouldn't say they're tied together, but I would say that they are catalysts for one another because of the Vietnam War. You know, that caused the Hmong men to like flee, and then by them fleeing to a different country, it caused them to like start dying in these mysterious ways. So I'm not saying that because
sure.
the Vietnam War was the cause of that, but they're
yeah.
incoherently like tied to one another.
Right.
And so that's why I was like, it would be hard to have the story be based in like 2018 or something like that, where we as like teens, like my character in the movie was like 18, 19 years old, so it's like it's hard.
Wait, you made a cameo?
No, my character.
Oh, the
Like,
main character.
yeah, the main character.
Okay.
Yep. So the main character, Mark, he's supposed to be like 18, 19 years old, and so it's like if I were to take like an 18, 19 year old in like 2018 and like make them go through that, it would be different because obviously like Mark's character, he's been through like the traumas of like war. He's been through the trauma of like losing his dad. He's been through the trauma of like living in a refugee camp and then like moving to America. So it's like he's gone through like all these struggles. Not saying that we don't have struggles in America, but they're on a different
kind of
it's
scale.
different. It's on a different scale. Like we always joke about like first world problems and stuff. It's like, come on, like my problems could never compare to like my parents' problems of like worrying about like, am I gonna live today? Like, am I gonna see tomorrow? Like, running for your life. Like, I don't have that worry, And so it's like, if I were to make this story in like 2018, I don't think it would be as powerful. So, and that's kind of like my reasoning why I was like, you know what, like, I could, but I don't think it would be as powerful, and I don't think it would be as contextually accurate.
Sure.
And so I was like, it's going to be hard to make a movie about the 60s and the 70s, but I want to try anyways. It's a risk worth taking. So, you know what? Got to live life.
Why not?
Got to take a risk in life. So I was like, we'll do it. So, I mean, it was hard, but I think for the majority of for what we got, I was pretty satisfied with it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I always think that you're putting out some good work. I like the fact that you're trying to say something more of the stuff that you make. And filmmaking, how did you get into that? Because I want to lead this into like storytelling eventually, but like how did you first get into like filmmaking?
So I first got into like filmmaking. I was always kind of doing it on the side.
For sure.
As I was like younger. I was in like school plays and stuff like that in middle school, high school, and stuff like that. So I guess acting or like theater was like always in my life, and so I was always kind of like,
wait. So like, what were you playing as in theater?
In theater,
Or you were like, were you tech or something?
No. I was actually in the play. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's recordings of there somewhere. I know someone has a recording of it. I don't have a recording.
Yeah?
I know someone does though, because I remember. I believe. I think our theater director probably has footage of it somewhere. I haven't talked to her in like.
Yeah.
God knows how long. That was like.
Dude, that was like ages ago.
10 years ago, 12 years ago maybe. So it's been a really long time, So it's like, so yeah, there's footage of it somewhere. But so that was kind of always in my life. And then it didn't really start until I joined. So I started teaching photography and video as the Gordon Parks youth coordinator. So
wow.
Yeah, so that was I used to attend Metro State. I attended Metro State for like a year. And so I was teaching photography and video as the Gordon Parks Youth Outreach Coordinator. And if anybody knows who like Gordon Parks is, just a little background on this gentleman. But he actually he lived in St. Paul for a period of his life. But he is like a world-renowned photographer that did the bulk of his work during early America, where segregation and like Jim Crow laws and schools were still segregated. So he grew up in the South, and as he grew up, he realized that, hey, like I'm pretty good at this photography stuff. He started out as like a fashion photographer,
Right.
but then he realized that, hey, like when he was growing up, he realized that segregation and everything that's going on in America is so bad. Like, what can I do to voice my opinion, or like what can I do to make the world a better place? So he started using photography as a tool to expose or combat or kind of make a commentary on the segregation between whites and blacks in early 50s and 60s. And so he started shooting these awesome photos, and he won so many awards for them. And mainly his subjects were segregation. Right. It was about racism. It was about blacks in America, and it was about how they're being mistreated and how there was such a huge gap between white America and black America. So he used photography as a tool to basically like combat racism. And
Right.
so when I was teaching, basically what I was teaching at the time was like, hey, how do you use like art to like express yourself, but also use it as a tool to kind of speak up against the wrongdoings in the world. So
Yeah.
Gordon Parks has this whole thing where it's like, hey, my weapon is a camera. So like that's one of his quotes. He says like, my weapon of choice is a camera, like, because I want to capture everything that's going on and like show the world everything that's wrong with the world, or like, hey, this is what is wrong, but this is also what we can do better with it. So so when I was teaching that, that was when I really got into it. I was like, you know what, like,
Dang, your roots go back to, and it's like
Yeah.
thematic Black History Month right now too.
Yep. So Gordon Parks was like, he was the weird thing is also is most of his work is in black and white. He has a lot of like color photography, but it's not as prominent, or it's not as powerful as his and granted, he also started doing photography like way before color film was like affordable,
Right.
or like color film was even available. So he was
Right.
like someone who was also not only a pioneer as like a civil rights activist, but a pioneer as in terms of like an artist as well. So
Right.
he was like a really big inspiration to me. And like as I was teaching my students this for like the year that I was doing it, I started to realize, I was like, hey, like this, yes, it is a form of entertainment, but it's also education. It's also like, it's more than something that you're just like, hey, that's cool,
Right.
and you just move on. And the thing with, and I think the thing with Gordon Parks is like, he was doing this at a time when like Instagram and like YouTube wasn't available, and so so it's like when you see his photos, you actually take time to like look at it and analyze it. Now it's like our lives are like bombarded with like images. It's like you walk down the street, you see like billboards, newspapers, they all have images on them. You go to Instagram, there's like millions of photos every day. Like me, when I go through my feed now, I just like scroll. Something might catch my attention, I'll just like double tap on it and just keep scrolling. I never like really look at it or like really analyze anything.
To like,
So it's like if someone took like a really provocative or like a very like thought-inducing photo, I would just look at it like, huh, cool, double tap and just scroll by, and like Gordon Parks, like he was going through a time where like when his photos of like racism made like front page, that's like in early America, most people couldn't afford TV, so it's like they got their news from newspapers. So it's like if you like making it onto like the front page of a newspaper and exposing racism was like a really, really big deal. So it's like he was a pioneer. He was a really big pioneer. So he's a really big inspiration for me.
Right. Well, I mean, video is kind of like the not the antithesis, but like the metamorphosis of what that was. Back in the day.
Yeah, and I think video is kind of like the same thing now as well too. It's
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, like when I think about stuff like that, I think about like police brutality, and when people see stuff like that, they're like, "Yo, like."
Yeah, I think that I think that's like a double-edged sword, because like on one, it's good that we have accessibility to that. We're like, hey, like everyone can use this to combat violence, or like everyone can use this to like speak up against like injustices, but then there's always like those people who just misuse it. It's like with
Right.
everything in life, you know, it's like sometimes like things that are like meant for good, it's like someone's gonna abuse it, or someone's
Yeah.
gonna misuse it. So I mean, and you know, the thing with even with YouTube, it's like, you know, there's so much video. I forgot what the exact number is, but I think it's like every single day there's like so many million hours of videos being uploaded onto YouTube, and it's like, god damn, that's
That's a lot.
a lot. It is a lot, and it's like, oh.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, and you know, there's so much. I mean, it's super saturated, but I think what strikes through is the stuff that is like true to whoever that person is, you know. But I mean, like, I don't know. You could also argue that people are paying for things too.
Yeah, I also think that like right now it's with the amount of like, there's so many people who are like content creators where it
Yeah.
could be anything now. It's like
Yeah.
music or photos or like,
Yeah, that's how
and
I describe myself. Right
yeah,
now.
that's how I describe myself too, as like a content creator. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of content creators, right?
Yeah.
Content creators could be like publishers or
Join
like,
the fad guys.
it's everywhere, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
I totally
actually
agree.
I think it's a good thing, and the reason why I think it's a good thing is because like everyone has like their niche of like followers, or like everyone has like their niche of like audience, and
Right.
it's like, okay, so this is gonna, like, for example, like mukbangs, like, okay,
Oh, dude.
seriously,
I want to do one of those one day.
like I didn't know what it was, and I was like, at first when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is like really weird. Like someone just sits in front of a camera and like eats. It's like, that's like really weird. But the weird thing is like that's their niche, and like there's people who are like willing to watch it, or like there's people who want to watch it. So it's
Right.
like there's always gonna be like these niches for everyone. It's like people.
It's like ASMR too.
Yeah, it's see, there's like people who like ASMR, there's people who like, you know, who make videos on nothing but like cats and like dogs or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it's like they always have niches. So it's like, as long as like there are niches to be served, like there will be a content creator for that
Right.
niche or whatever it means. So I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah. I think cats is like the number one
Yeah.
trending style of video right now
it's
too.
crazy.
Just to let you guys know, for the listeners, I'm eating Maori-chan ramen, so you might have some ASMR in here. Yeah, also sick. But in the terms of being a content creator, like I think you know, there's merit to just doing random stuff. So the way I see the videos of like cats and things like that, is almost like a getaway drug from reality, so to speak, or like the way, or like things that go viral, or like challenges that happen. It's just like, it's viral and it's cool because like it takes you out of like the nitty gritty of the daily life that people generally have to go through. At least in our age, you know, I would assume that for like 12-year-olds or 11-year-olds, they're just like trying to discover more about the world, and it's pretty funny and it's pretty cool. But in terms of like building a brand, I think you need to tell a story, you know?
Yeah, I think that, and also you have to have like some sort of like specialization, or like some sort, and this goes back to like the niche thing, is like you have to cater to like a certain audience. So it's like, for me, I think the reason why like my content hasn't really been as like successful is because I'm kind of all over the place.
Sure.
Because it's like, on one hand, it's like I make videos about like equipment, but then I also make videos about like vlogs, and then you make videos on like reviews, and it's like kind of all over the place, and it's like I don't really have like a specialization where it's like, hey, you do your channel, or like your content is like one thing, and then you just focus on that one thing. I think my content is kind of like all over the place, and that's kind of something that I'm trying to work on too, is like, hey, you know, like become more specialized, or like cater to like a specific niche that is true to who you are,
Sure.
but also that it can like generate a lot of content.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I and I think this is like a trend that I see a lot with like a lot of YouTubers too. It's like they do so much of everything that their channel just gets like lost. Like that's why it's like I follow a lot of like tech YouTubers, and like that's all they do is like tech. Like they don't do anything else. That's all they do. And then I follow like car YouTubers, where all they do is like cars, or like people who do like reviews, and that's all they do is like reviews. It's like trying to be like specialized and just have like a target audience that you're trying to go after is I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying as well too.
I don't know, man. I think I would disagree with you on that one. Like I think that I don't think that you need to be so niche or specialized. I mean, I agree with you that there's a market for all of that, and if you find your market, props to you. But I mean, like, I feel like we're similar in the sense that like you can't, well, at least for me, I can't really stick to one thing always. So I like expressing myself in different avenues, but I think the issue there is just being consistent and pumping out content at that point. And like I've seen your stuff like on YouTube and things like that, and you do have like a lot of different vlogs and things like that, but I feel like you only have like one or two of each style, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think it's enough out there to be like, yo, this is really who I am.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is like I'm kind of in like an experimental phase where it's like, hey, like what is best? Like so that's why it's diverse, but at the same time it's kind of like a hodgepodge of stuff. It's kind of like this like odd mixture of like. And so for context, I'm talking from like a YouTube type of context where like if someone were to like visit my like YouTube page,
They're like,
they'd
oh,
be
what
like,
does this guy do?
Yeah, like what does this guy do? And then like they look at it and it's like, oh, it's like a little bit of like everything. It's like, okay, short films, okay, like reviews, okay, like vlogs, okay, like build stuff. It's like, okay, like what is this, like what is this channel? You know, it's like
right.
And I'm thinking that, you know, I just want to have more sense of direction where it's just like, hey, like this is what I want my channel to be, or like if I want it to be like just nothing but like short films, I just want to be like, okay, this is just like short films, like that's it. Or if it's like, hey, like if I'm gonna do nothing but like vlog, I'm just gonna like vlog, you know. And yeah, I think I would agree that, you know, you have to. You can experiment in different ways, and you can express yourself differently. But I also think that without a sense of like direction, it's hard to know exactly like how to express yourself or like what avenue to take. So like what I'm trying to figure out now is just like the direction that I want to go in. It's like, okay, like what style or like what format or like what type of message do I want to put out there. And I think once I can figure out like the message that I want to say, it will help me push out more content. And I hate using them as an example, but they're a good example. Like for example, like Wong Fu.
Yeah.
I like they're like honestly they're like a really one-off example. So that's why I say they're not a really good example, because they're kind of like an anomaly, because it's like no one else has been able to, I wouldn't say replicate or reproduce the type of like success that they've been able to do. Because at first they started out as just like nothing but short films.
Yeah.
Nothing but short films, but their short films were kind of sparse too, because it'd be like one every like 6 months or like one every year or something like that, right?
Right.
And so it's like, you know, it's not like they're like a traditional YouTube page where someone's pumping out content like every single week or like every single day, you know. They'd be like one every 6 months, one every year, but then each film would garner like so much success that it's okay if they have like a dry spell for like 6 months, you know. They're still getting like millions of other views from like their previous video. So it's like, and then when they come out with a new one, they just keep riding that wave, you know. And it's like, and so now that they've been able to do that, now, you know, they have all these other channels where it's just like Wong Fu Fun or like whatever. They have like all these like sub channels. Yeah, they have all these like sub channels, and it's like, for me as like
that's where you want to be.
I wouldn't say that. I would characterize myself as like a filmmaker before even if I had to choose like what should I call myself, a content creator or like a filmmaker. I would call myself a filmmaker because that's my primary job, and
Facts.
that's my passion, and that's like what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so for me, that's not possible because it's like if I come up with one film, it might be a hit for like 2 or 3 months, and then it'll die down. And then you'll have to, and it's like making films is not easy. It takes like 6, 7, 8 months to make like one film, and then you put out another one. And if it's good, then great. You know, if it's not, then it's like, oh shit. So you have nothing. You have nothing. You know, you have nothing generating views. You have nothing generating like anything else. So it's like that's why I'm like, you know what, like Wong Fu, what they've done is great, but I hate using them as an example because it's like they've done something that is like just. I wouldn't say impossible to replicate, but I would say it's really, really hard to like be able to do something like they've done. That's why when people are like, "Oh my God, I want to be like Wong Fu," it's like you can, but it's super, super hard, you know. And especially now, like YouTube has changed quite a bit too, because like I've been like a super early adopter of like YouTube, like when they first started, and I've seen them change like throughout the years of like when it came up, but it's like now with how much saturation there is on there and like how much content there is on there, and with everything that's gone, I guarantee you that if like Wong Fu were to start fresh like today with like no followers, if they were to like just start today, it would be extremely hard for them as well too. So they came in at a time where it's like not a lot of people were doing it, and they had good content. I'm not dismissing any of that. Their content is really good. Yeah, but I love their stuff.
At the time that they came in, the organic reach was
they came at the right time, and they were making really good stuff. So it's like now they're just like riding their success, and it's like for someone like me who's like really, really trying to do that, it's hard for us to like catch up now.
For sure. Yeah, but I agree with you, but I don't think like I'm pretty sure you're not gonna let that stop you. But for anybody else listening, like I mean, you shouldn't let those things stop you. There's a book out there, The Magic of Thinking Big. I don't know the author right now, but the book is called The Magic of Thinking Big, and one of the key things that the book mentions it's a self-development kind of a book. So basically one of the chapters is about key reasons why successful people are successful, and it talks about the power of excuses, in addition to a lot of other things that happen to be what your mindset is about. But the thing is that if you're always going to have excuses, then you're essentially just limiting yourself. You're telling yourself that you can't do it and that you won't do it because you've already subconsciously made an excuse of like, oh, like these are the reasons why they got it and I can't do it. So I mean, like the biggest thing I think people should always have is a growth mindset. But then again, I think at the time, I mean, look, how it is that Wong Fu got big because like their storytelling was on point. And that's the power of telling stories. Like, I don't know, like, do you want to talk a little bit about? Like,
I think that, you know, and this goes back to what you said about like thinking big too. I'm sure, like, I don't know if you know the story of like Wong Fu and them really well, but so, you know, it's honestly, it started out as like just these 3 dudes who just like wanted to make videos for fun, you know, and like they obviously like they were going to school and stuff like that, and they just started making like these videos for fun, and I'm sure at the time they were not like, hey, you know what, I want to have like 10 million subscribers and like have all these channels. I'm sure they weren't thinking about it like that at that time, but I'm positive that they were probably thinking to themselves, hey, you know what, like we're gonna do the best we can. We're gonna make this as big as possible, and we're just gonna see where it takes us, you know. And so they weren't limiting themselves. They weren't like, I'm pretty sure they weren't like, hey, we're you know what, we're gonna put this video out and it's whatever. You know, I'm sure it wasn't like that, you know, and that's not how I view it too. So when I put out a video, it's like, hey, you know what, like I'm gonna do the best I can, and I'm gonna try to get as many views as I can and like make it as make it as good as I can, and we'll see what happens. You know, I don't put out a video and be like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm done, you know, and move on. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that they weren't, you know, thinking small. And like you said, I don't think that this should stop anyone. It's just, the reason why I brought that up is just to tell people, like, the playing field has, like, changed quite a bit. And so now you just have to, like we mentioned before, like, one, discover your niche and really, like, do something that you're really passionate about so that you can keep doing it. Because you're not going to get, like, I mean, it might happen. You might be like a million view sensational. I mean, Rebecca Black did it, so
Yeah.
it's possible.
Yeah,
but
facts.
the chances of that are, like, small, you know. So it's like you have to be able to be like, hey, you know, like, it may be like a year before you get, like, your 1,000 subscriber, like your 100th subscriber,
Right.
or whatever it may be, whatever number
Right.
you're trying to aim for. You know, it may take you a while to do that, but it's like, if you're making stuff you don't love, it's like you're not gonna do it. You're not gonna hang around that long to get your 100 subscribers.
Right.
You know, if you're not doing something you love, you're just gonna be like, whatever. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, you're gonna give up. You know, so
Yeah.
you should do something that you should do something that you love, so that it's like, hey, you know what, like, even if no one's watching my content, even if I don't have, like, my 1,000 subscribers, I'm gonna keep doing it because it's, like, something
Yeah.
I love. And so, like, and that's kind of what has kept me going too, is like, I share content not because, like, I'm trying to be like the next Wong Fu. It's like, I do it
Yeah.
because I love it, and it's
Yeah.
like, I do it because, like, I make stuff and I want to share it with the world, and I want to tell people, like, hey, like, this is what I've made, or, like, this is what I've done. Now I want to share it with you guys. You know, I want to share it with the world. And it's like, honestly, I've kind of, like, you know, gone to the point where it's like, I'm just gonna do stuff that I love, and I'm just gonna do stuff that I'm happy with. I'm just gonna do stuff that I like to do. So it's like, if I get 1 million subscribers, awesome. If I don't, it's like, I'm not gonna die about it, you know. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
cry about it either. So it's like, I'm gonna keep doing what I love, and I think it'll happen, but,
For sure.
you know, I'm not banking on it to happen within, like, the next 2 days or something like that, you know, because I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep doing what I love. So, and so everyone who's listening, it's just like, do what you love. It's gonna take time until, like, and it might not even be YouTube. Like, you may, like, let's say you're like a blogger or something like that, right?
Right.
So it's like, I know you have analytics of, like, how many people visit your blogs every day. So it's like, if you have a certain number, you're like, hey, you know what? I want to have, let's say that you want to have 1,000 people visit your blog every day to read your blog, or to read your article, or whatever it may be. It could very well be a long time before you get that magic number of 1,000. So it's like, if you're blogging about random stuff that you're not passionate about, like, what's gonna push you to keep blogging if you
Yeah.
don't see that number? You know, some people,
Facts.
they like, that number means so much to them. It's like, okay, all right, I got that 1,000, so I'm gonna keep going. And then the day where that 1,000 drops to, like, 200, they're like, do I really want to do this? Like, my numbers have dipped so low, you know, and they're not gonna want to do it anymore. But if you're doing something you love, it's like, you can go from, like, 1,000 to, like, 2 or 3 people visiting your website every day. You could be like, you know what, I don't care, I'm gonna keep writing because I like to write, or it's like,
Yeah.
because I like to share my story with people, or, like, because I like to, simply because I just like to blog, you know, like, who you know, whatever your motivation may be, at least make sure that it's like a genuine source of motivation,
Right.
is, like, my advice to you. So
I feel that. And sometimes if you can't make it there, I think that it takes a high level of self-awareness to really get to that point of which you're talking about. And so, like, you know, I bet there's a bunch of people out there that would be like, yeah, but, like, again, one, they're either making excuses, or they're, like, saying, I am putting in the work, but it's just not coming through, and things like that. And so, I mean, at that point, you just gotta get creative. I mean, like, if you're really trying to, if you're doing it for no monetization, well, that's great for you, but I'm pretty sure that anybody who's really trying to hit the million subscriber mark is trying to get famous and get sponsorships and all those things, and that's
Yeah.
cool. But if it's not happening for you, and like, you just have to be patient. Like, like, short term isn't a year. Short term is like 4.5 years. You have to think short term in that. And like, to your point, I always complain that I'm way too old, but I'm only 24.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you really look at it, I have at least another 55 years before I can actually stop moving and like thinking for myself or whatever may happen. But I have about 55 more years, and I only started like doing things for money in the past like 5. And it's just like, if you're young, my thing is that like, I feel like I'm too old because there's a saying out there that genius is wasted on the youth. And the idea there is that when you're young, you have all these amazing ideas, but you don't have the wisdom to carry and execute it out. But by the time you get to the point where you do have the wisdom to carry it out, there's way more barriers at that point in which you can't do it anymore. And so that's always my conundrum.
Yeah. I agree. I will. So one of my all-time favorite directors, his name is Ang Lee. So he directed Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and then he also directed Life of Pi. And so
yes, he did.
His story is like really special, and like I wouldn't say it's like a motivation, but it's just like really eye-opening, because like, if for those of you who don't know who he is, I'll tell you like a little bit of backstory. So he is originally from Taiwan, and so he wanted to go to film school, but his dad was like, no, you can't go, because obviously being like a traditional like Taiwanese family, a traditional Asian family, his dad was like, no, you have to go to school to be like an engineer, doctor, whatever. So he's like, nah, like, Deuce, I'm going to like NYU to get my like film degree. And so like he went to NYU, he got his film degree, he moved back to Taiwan, and like he couldn't get a job, he couldn't get like a gig, he could not like get a producer to like produce any of his films. And so like he came back, and he basically was like a stay-at-home dad for like, I forgot how many years it was, but his wife was working at the time, so his wife worked to support him and his daughter. And so he would just stay home, and he would just like write films, he would just like write scripts like every day. And he did this for like a number of years, and then he finally got someone to produce like one of his films. And then like after that, it just got the ball rolling, and then he became, obviously he's won like the Academy Award for like Best Director and all this stuff, and now he's like a multi-million. And it's funny because it's like I'm sure at that point where when he finished school and he came back and no one wanted to hire him, or like no one wanted to produce any of his films, he was just like what do I do?
Oh, man, I made a wrong choice.
Yeah, he made the wrong choice. And it takes balls, because like he could have easily been like, hey, you know what, like, okay, no one hired me, I'm just gonna go and pick up like a 9 to 5 and just like slave away at whatever job that would have just paid. But he didn't. He was like steadfast, and he was like, you know what, like, honey, I'm sorry, like, I'm not gonna give up on my dreams. I'll be a stay-at-home dad. I will like cook and clean for you.
Yeah,
you go work, support us, but I'm not gonna give up on my dreams. And like, I'm just gonna keep writing films. I'm gonna keep like hustling and like doing my best. And then I mean, it paid off. He's made a lot of good movies. I mean, he's most well known for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I'm sure everyone has seen that movie, but it's like, if he would have just given up, it's like
that would have never happened.
That movie would have never happened. Exactly. If he would have just been like, hey, you know what, like, no one's hiring me, no one's giving me money to make my film, I'm just gonna give up and just go work a 9 to 5. And like I said, I forgot how many years it was, but it was quite a while. It was quite a bit of time before someone actually gave him any money to make a film. So he's also another really big inspiration of mine. And I think that goes for like not just like filmmakers, but for like everyone.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree. I think two morals to the story. The first one being, all right, fellas, marry a girl that's gonna,
I forgot what his wife does though, so don't quote me on that.
just marry a girl that's gonna like pay for the bills, bro, so you can just chill at home.
Yeah, I don't remember.
That's moral
I
number
think she
one.
made
Just
enough
kidding.
money to support them though.
Just kidding. Don't do that. But for real, an important thing about that story, I think that people always overlook because of the fame and the glamour, is that yes, everybody understand, like all y'all, and like you and I know that, yeah, he put in a lot of effort, but it always, I have this saying that like you can't get to where you want to be until you become that, and the only reason you get to be where you want to be is because you've already been that for a while. So like my example is like you can't be a doctor at the best hospital in the world unless you already reached the level of being the best doctor in the world. Like, you can't just walk into the best hospital, work there, and then hope to be the best doctor. Like it doesn't work like that. So you can't be the amazing director in your case, in Hollywood or Bollywood or in like South Korea is making a huge move at every facet of the entertainment business. But you can't be a big, well-known hotshot until you've already been that hotshot for a long time, and now people are just picking it up. Mm-hmm. And so like, and that only comes if you're putting in the equity,
Mm-hmm.
heart, sweat, and tears into your craft. And if you don't have that, then I'm not saying you should quit, but you should reevaluate where your priorities are, or figure out what your why is.
Yep.
Because the stronger your why is, the more concrete your why is, you can endure anyhow to get to your destination. But yeah, so back to you making films and stuff. I know you met a lot of cool people in your journey in making all these films and things like that. And every time I go hang out with you, dude, I swear this guy, he knows everybody, everywhere we go. Maybe it's a bias because we're always hanging out with mutual friends and things like that. But yeah, like on your journey, obviously you've had to make friends, but like how do you like how would you categorize your friendships, or like how would you rate, or I don't want to say rate, but like describe them?
Yeah, I would say that in terms of like actual friends, I would say I have very few friends. And to me, I consider friends as people who I see like on the daily, or someone that I communicate with on like a different level than I would just communicate with someone that I know. So like to me, like my friends are people I see constantly, or someone that I can communicate with differently. And so like if that, so that's my categorization of like friends. And so in terms of like friends, I would say I don't have a lot of friends, which to me is fine, and I like it like that. I don't want to have a lot of like friends, because I feel like when you have a lot of like so-called friends, it becomes distracting, and it also like introduces like unnecessary drama or like unnecessary stuff in your life. And so like like for me, friends are people that I trust. Friends are people that I know wouldn't do me wrong, and thank God I don't have like a horror story of like friends, which is like very rare.
Like you got backstabbed or
Yeah,
something?
I don't have any stories like that. And so and I'm very honest when I say I don't have any like bad stories of like friends. And so I consider myself very fortunate, because you always hear people and meet people where they're like, oh my God, I used to have like this best friend, and like they fucked me over, like they did this to that. Like, I don't have that story. I don't have a story like that to tell. So it's like, and I would say the reason I don't have a story like that to tell is because I am pretty mindful of like who I hang out with, and I'm pretty mindful of like who I call my friend. And so, like I said, friends are people I see constantly. Friends are people who I communicate with like on a different level. So it's like, I would say that was kind of like a good reason why I don't have like a lot of friends. But in terms of like acquaintances and in terms of like people who I work with, and in terms of like people who I just hang out with like casually, I know quite a bit of people like that, but I wouldn't consider them my friends, because you either just hang out with them once in a blue moon, or like when you communicate with them, it's just like small talk. I don't really consider people like that my friend. And for anybody who sees this and thinks that you're one of those people,
if you're listening in or you're watching,
Yeah.
he's talking about you.
that doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean I don't respect you, or that doesn't mean like I don't value you. Like I do.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you were to ask me honestly, like, hey, like, do you consider me like your friend? And
Yeah.
like I said, to me, I have a criteria of like, hey, these are my friends. I would probably say, you're probably not my like friend. I would consider you like an acquaintance, or like I
Or a
would consider
cool
you someone
person.
that like you're cool. Like I would hang out with you, but are you like my friend?
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't say that.
Yeah. So what are your criteria? Just because of your circumstance of having to be like a social butterfly, or like
Yeah.
needing to be.
I would say I don't really have a criteria. Well, I don't have like a scale of like, hey,
Or
you
like,
have to
but
be.
there's a threshold, right?
There is, and most of it is people who I have met that I see that they have a lot of like similar qualities to myself, or like a similar values as friends that I have. So it's like I've hung out, I'm sure we've all gone through that phase where you're really young and like you meet a lot of people and you're like, oh my God, that's my friend. You're like, that's my best friend or whatever. But really, it's like, are they really your friend, or like, are they really your best friend? So it's like, we all go through that phase. I don't have a bad experience to tell you of that, but it's like we all go through that phase. And I think as I've gotten like older, like I started to think like, like, are these people, these people that I go to like social outings with, like, it's like, are they really my friends? I don't really know. I probably wouldn't call them my friends. I'd call them like acquaintances, or like people who I would hang out with them again, but I wouldn't say they're like my friends, so it's like friends to me are people who, it's like if I have like a Thanksgiving dinner, I'd be like, hey, come over, let's spend like quality time together, or like, hey, I want to like invest time into this friendship and like see it through many years. And it's like I've known people for many years, probably like 8-10 years now. It's like, but I've seen them like 3 times or something like that, and it's like every time we see each other, it's like the small talk, like, hey, how are you doing? Okay, great, bye, see you later, or like that's it. It's like you know them, but nothing has been like invested in that relationship. It's like I haven't invested anything to it, they haven't invested anything to it. So at that point, it's just like we know each other, but we're not like friends. Like I said, so if friends is like someone, like I said, who is willing to invest time into that relationship, because it's like a boyfriend and girlfriend thing. It's like if your friends don't invest anything into you and you don't invest anything into your friends, then is that really a friendship, or is that even really a relationship?
Yeah.
So I would say that that's kind of like, if we're talking about like thresholds, I would say that's the threshold. And that just comes with, and I wouldn't say it comes with time, but it comes with like the deeds, or like it comes with the actions of the person. So like, for example, like, I use Angel as an example, and Angel's like one of my best friends. I would say she's probably like one of the closest people, or the closest person that's to me. She knows like almost everything about me. So it's like, she became that person after like 2 years in my life, so it's like, in terms of like time, we've only known each other for 2 years. It's like, okay, if we're basing like relationships on time, she doesn't really have a lot of time on me. I have friends who've known me since I was like a child, since I was like 10 years old. So if we're basing it on time, she loses. But if you're basing it on like deeds, if you're basing on like life experiences, like the experiences that we've had together, if you're basing it on like the conversations, or the mutual bond that we have with one another, she probably like outranks everyone by like tenfold. So it's like, I that's why I'm like, I don't think it's I don't think time is a good measurement of like friendships. And,
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, a lot of my friends that I've known for like 10 years now, you lose contact with them, and so much changes, and people change, and so it's like, if we're just going on time, then I would have to consider them my best friend. I'm like, oh my God, you're my best friend. You've known me for like 15 years now, but it's like,
Yeah.
they don't even know who I am anymore, So it's like time doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It just depends on the person and who it is. And I would say a good example is, and we've talked about this a bunch of times too, is like Jo and Kenji and like Lizelle. It's like, and like Josh, it's like we don't talk throughout the year. We probably talk like 3 or 4 times max.
Yeah.
Since I've moved, so that's been like, so I've been away for like 2-3 years now.
Yeah.
And it's like we probably talk like 4 times max throughout the year. We probably see each other once a year. But the thing is, like, we still invest things into our relationship. So it's like when we do talk out of those 4 times, it's not small talk. It's actually like heart-to-heart talks, or like it's talks that are not just like, hope you're doing well, bye. It's like, hey, how have you been? Like, how's your parents? Like, how's work? How's life? Like, how are you and your boyfriend? Like, what's bothering you? Like, have you been okay? Like, I see you seem kind of sad. Like, how have you been? It's talks, and it's like, it's stuff that actually matters, so it's like, to me is what I mean as like investing time into your friendship. So
Gotcha.
yeah. And I have like quite a few friends that are like that, because it's like, I have friends who are out in like LA, and I haven't seen them in a while, but it's like, when we do talk, it's conversations that are like heartwarming, or it's conversations that are actually like building blocks, or like conversations that are like investing in one another. So
I feel that.
yeah.
I feel that. I would have to say that I'm kind of like on the, not the other extreme side of where you're at, so to speak. So like, so earlier you're like, you're okay with keeping your friend group kind of small, and everything is relative. So small could mean like 20 people for you, but for me, like, I always am searching to make new friends, so to speak. Not to say that, I mean, like, if I don't land there, that's cool. So to your point that since moving back, I've been meeting a bunch of people, and we're cool and all, but like, yeah, I would agree. Like, I wouldn't call them like my friends, but I would love to make them my friends. And that in itself is just, that's a personal thing, because like, me growing up was like I remember, like, this is like such a, I don't even know why it's such a strong memory, but it's so strong. I don't think I'll ever forget it unless I have like crazy Alzheimer's, But like, I always remember back in elementary school, so in my elementary school where I went, there was like, there's a playground, and then there was a soccer field, and then there was like a garden area, so to speak, or like a hilly area that was patioed. Not patioed, but it was a man-made hill, essentially. And so like, I always remember walking around that hill like during recess time, like alone. And so like that, and it wasn't just like for 1 year, like it sounds depressing, but like, it wasn't it wasn't just for 1 year. It was like, I moved into that elementary school when I got into 2nd grade. So it was from like 2nd grade up until I graduated. And it wasn't like I was always there walking by myself. There was times where I played with the other kids. I played in the soccer games that happened at recess, but majority of the time I was like walking around there. And at times when I was by myself, some other kids would come up and be like, hey, like, what are you like talking, and things like that. But for sure, I've always remembered like being like alone, and then like like being in that like solitary state.
Mhm.
You know, this is why I cry when I watch like My Hero Academia, or like Naruto didn't really make me cry, but when Naruto, when he's on the swing, he's looking at all the other kids. I was like, yo, like, fuck, like I feel that, yo, like, oh, I've been there. But for sure, I didn't really cry. Uh, the only animes that I've ever cried to was Assassination Classroom, and now My Hero Academia. I think because My Hero Academia, it just touches upon a lot of things that like I just like really went through, and I was like I really felt. But anyways, so I'm always looking to like make new friends, and that experience also shaped who I am, and like so but not other people don't know. I was a president of my Asian student organization back at Columbia, where we went to school. But and I didn't really get a lot of flack for it publicly, but I always heard about it through the grapevine. And the thing was is that a lot of the people that attended ASO were girls. And so since I was president for 2 years, I would always be talking to them. And for the people that were lonely, I just had this like kind of complex now that I would rather like to talk to the people who are lonely and just making them feel comfortable, things like that. And because it just happened to be girls, through the grapevine, people would always be like, yo, like, oh, Daniel, he's such a flirt. He was like, I think he's trying to hit on me, but I'm not sure. I'm like, yo, like, I'm just doing my duties. That's how I felt. But I really am always trying to like make new friends. Not that I don't want to make lasting friendships. I think that's where I want to get to. But because I didn't have a wealth of friends growing up, it's kind of like I'm trying to fill that hole. You know what I'm saying?
I would say that for me, I don't have that experience. But
Mr. Popular over here.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that what really got me out of my shell though is I realized that like in the line of work that we do, you have to know people. Like honestly, I hate it when people, I didn't realize how true it was though. It's like when you work in like, I'll just say entertainment business, because that's kind of what we do, is like entertain people, like music you make, content, you're entertaining people, right? So in the entertainment business, you have to know people. You cannot go through it alone. It's impossible to do it alone. You have to know people who are either more intelligent than you or more skilled than you, or people who are more experienced than you. You just have to know people. And so it's like, for me, at first I was kind of like content with like knowing the people that I knew. I was like, you know what, I know X amount of people, I'm fine, like I'm good, I don't need to know any other people. But then you slowly start to realize like, hey, if I don't like rapidly like expand my circle, or if I don't start to like network everywhere I go, it's like I'm just doing myself like a disservice, because you never know who you're gonna meet. You never know like who is gonna be able to help you. And it may sound like you're using people, which is not what I'm trying to get at, but you never know who you're gonna meet, or like you never know who your next like friend will be, and they may just be someone who's very, very, very like influential, or they may just be someone who can like really, really help you out. You never know that. And so it's like, for me, like I said, I was always okay with just like meeting XYZ people, and it's like, okay, it's whatever. But now it's like, when I go, it's like I kind of make it almost kind of like a mission, or like I always kind of make it almost like an objective to at least meet some new people, or like expand my network, or like expand my connection of people, if not by like 10 people, but like at least like one new person. That doesn't mean I'm gonna make them my friend, but it's like I need to expand my like wealth of knowledge, and the more people the greater your wealth of like knowledge will like expand. So it's like in the industry, like if for anyone who is like doing the same thing we're doing, like it doesn't matter if you're doing like music, for me, it's like I'm always looking for actors, I'm always looking for producers, I'm always looking for other artists to work with. So it's like if I meet someone like that, I'm gonna talk to them. I want to like get to know them. It's like, hey, what do you do? Like yada yada yada. How can I help you? How can you help me? So it's like there's always that like conversation. So it's like, one, it's making friends, but two, it's also like making a connection, because down the line you never really know what can come up and like who can help you.
Right.
So
yeah, I also want to preface that in saying that, like, I think, in an ideal world, where we could keep our friend group small, I think it would only really work if everybody in the group was willing to have a sort of mindset that, like, you're always down to create and you're always creating, because that's one of the drawbacks to having a short network, is that, let's say you want to do a film and you only need X, Y, and Z actors, crew, sound, composers and things like that, and they're all in they're all your friends already, but either one, they don't want to do it for whatever reasons, or they can't do it, then it's like, okay, well, who else do you know? Now you have to go buy someone. Like you have to go find someone who will offer you the services. But it's easier when you know more people who do that. Then you have more people to call upon, but that's an ideal world where everybody in your group was always like doing something and like being proactive and making the dream work.
Yeah. And I think that's also, it also goes to show like why you need to have a big network of like people, because ultimately, like I said, I don't want to make this sound belittling to people, but ultimately like those people are like a resource in a way. So it's like, whether it be a resource of time, or whether it be a resource of wealth, or like whether it be a resource of like knowledge, like that's a resource. And if you don't make that connection, then you don't have that resource. It's that simple. It's like, if you play StarCraft, right? It's exactly like that. It's like they're a resource. It's like,
if you don't expand your base,
if you don't you're
gonna lose.
Yeah, that's a game. So it's like, if you don't expand your base, if you don't gather more resources, you're not gonna win. You're not gonna get to your objective. And so like, for Ntsuj, for example, it's like, for that film, it's like, we didn't have enough people. So originally, when I had like got my crew together, it was probably like 10 people, and those were just the people I knew immediately. But it was like, okay, well, so I was like, okay, I know 10 people cannot do this, because this is like a 5-day shoot and everyone's busy. Some of you guys are gonna be on and off, and it's like, we need more people. And so we started reaching out. It was like, hey, who do you know that can fill this role, or like, who do you know who can do this? And pretty soon our crew of like 10 turned into like a crew of like 30 people. And so it's like, before I knew it, it's like we had every position filled. We had people who are like knowledgeable in their field, and it's like, without that, I think our production would have been way, way worse than what it was, So, excuse me. So it's like, without that, I don't think our film would have ever been finished. So it's like, they are a resource, but the only way you can get that resource is if you can expand your connection, or like expand your network, get to know more people, and gather those resources.
Yeah.
But you should but in return, you're also a resource for them as well. It's that's kind of like an unspoken rule of artists. It's like, someone does something for you, it's only nice that you return the favor for them and say, hey, like, I'll help you out here, or like, what do you need? Like, I'll be a resource for you as well. So that's like an unspoken rule of life. So
yeah. But sometimes it's not met, but also it's like, do you want to work with that other artist in a different kind of capacity too? Like, for example, for me, there's this new guy I just met, and he told me when we first met that he's a producer, and he's trying to become. He also raps, but he wants someone else to produce his beats that he raps on, which doesn't really make sense to me. if you could already produce your own beats, in terms of just like a resource game, like if you could do it yourself, why not just do it yourself? But so I listened to his stuff and I was like, I don't know if I like, you're a cool person and like I vibe with you and like we can talk and things like that, but like your music and like the message you put in your music, I don't know if I want to really be a part of that. And I told him that we had a meeting the other day and I told him that. And I also told him that like I don't know any of your other music, because he said that he's had at least like 50 songs or something just unpublished. And I'm just like, okay, well, I haven't heard those, but the pool of art that I've listened to, I'm not really vibing with that. And so like you just have to like take into consideration, is that where you want to put yourself to, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I would say that, I've had instances like that too, where, I've been asked to help people work on stuff, and it's like, so I'm going to say something that's like, I wouldn't say it's controversial. I would say that it is going to be, there's going to be a split. There's going to be like two different camps to this. There's going to be people who like agree with me, and there's going to be people who like don't agree with me. Okay. And so
do it.
When I was like, a perfect example is like when I was coming up, and I'm not even saying that I'm like a well-known director or anything like that. So like when I started making, I probably only made like 2 short films at the time. And it's like I wanted to work with this guy, and he was like way more well-known than me, and it's like I wanted to work with him so bad, and I was like will you work with me? And he was like, no, because your work is not good enough yet. Okay. So I was like, oh man, like why won't you like mentor me, or like why wouldn't you, like if you're better than me, like why won't you mentor me, and like why won't you teach me your skills, and why won't you like help me out? Yeah. But now that I'm on the reverse, where it's like there are artists where they're like, hey, can you work with me? And I'm like, I don't really know if I want to work with you, because we're on like 2 different like levels right now. And I didn't understand that until like looking back at it now. And I don't know if, I'm not going to say that these were that guy's reason that he didn't work with me now, but for me, there's 2 different, so I have 2 different mindsets. I have the mindset of like, hey, do you want someone to teach you, and do you want someone to be your mentor? Like I will do that for you. Like if you want someone to teach you, and if you want someone to be your teacher or your mentor, that's different. I will do that for you. But if you want someone to work with you and like collaborate with you, and you're not on my level, I don't want to collaborate with you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like collaboration, like for me, I view collaboration as like, hey, you know what? Me and you, we're not far off from one another. Like we are in the same field, we're on the same plane, and like we're gonna collaborate, right? Yeah. But if you want me to collaborate with you, and you're like all the way like down here, and like I'm up here, or it's the reverse, like, and like I said, this has happened to me too. It's like I was down here, he was up here. He doesn't want to collaborate with me because like I am like way under his radar. He didn't even know who I am. So it's like, why would I want to collaborate with you? But it's like, if you want me to be your teacher, or if you want me to be your mentor, that's different. That's like, hey, take me under your wing and mentor me and teach me. It's like, okay, I'm willing to do that. But if you're saying, let's collaborate, or like, let's make something together, but it's like, we're on like 2 different levels. It's like, I don't think this is considered like a collaboration, because it's like, if we collaborate, I'm just going to be carrying most of the load anyways. Yeah. So it's like, that's not really collaborating, So it's like, I don't really want to work with you. I don't really want to collaborate with you, because your stuff is like not up to my standards, and it's like not up to par. For sure. So it's like, I will like teach you, and like I'll mentor you, but I'm not going to consider this a collaboration, right? So like, and the reason why I say there's 2 camps is like, there's people who are like, oh my God, you think you're too good, you don't want to work with them. It's like, yes, that's true. But then there's also the group of people who are like, no, he has a legitimate point, because it's like, for example, if I were to like reach out to, and this is like a really extreme example. But it's like if I were to reach, so we talked about like Ong Lee earlier. So it's like if I were to reach out to Ong Lee and be like, Ong Lee, let's collaborate. He's like, dude, I'm like an Academy Award director. Like, this is not a collaboration. You know, you can hire me if you pay me like $5 million. Like, I'll work for you, but this is not like a collaboration, you know? So it's like, that's like a really bad extreme example, but it's like that, you know? So it's like, and going to what you said as well, it's like, you know, if you don't vibe with them, if you don't believe in the message that they're sending, it's like, okay, you know, like, one, you know, I don't really believe in the message that you're sending, or like, two, you don't think they're like up to snuff yet.
Right.
And so I'm not gonna do it. Now, there are cases where, you know, I have met like really young like filmmakers who have like made like one film, or like have made no films, but they show so much promise and they show like so much talent where it's just like, I just want to work with you. You know, it's like, I've met a lot of people like that, you know, where it's like, I've told them, I was like, hey, you know what, when you're ready to do something, let me know, because like, I want to work with you, because they show like so much promise, or like they show so much skills that it's like, hey, you know what, even though you've made nothing, I think you're as good as me. Like, we're on like the same plane, like we're on the same radar, you know? It's like, I want to work with you. And then, like I said, on the flip side, there's people who've made tons of stuff and you're just like, your stuff is still not that good, you know? It's like, so, you know, I'm sure for rappers it's the same thing. I'm sure for rappers, singers, it's the same thing, you know? It's you know, I could say the same thing for you know, if you're a rapper, if you're a well-known rapper, why would you want to feature someone who is like not as good as you, you know, or like feature someone who is like unknown and shows like no promise or like no skill? You wouldn't want to feature them for like those what 16 bars that they get when they get featured. It's like, I'm not gonna feature you. You're not good. Yeah. So, and a feature is like a collaboration, basically, you know, because their name is on there. It's like they're part of that song. It's like, that's a collaboration as well. So it's like, if I'm gonna collaborate with you, we both have to be skilled. We both have to be like on the same radar, or we both have to show like enough promise. So, so like I said, to whoever's listening to it, don't get me wrong. You know, it's like there's collaboration, and then there's like teaching, and then there's like mentoring. Those I view those as like two different things. And so that's why, like, you know me, I teach a lot. And so it's like, I don't mind teaching, because I know that like I'm passing on my skills to someone who will take it further, and someone who genuinely wants to learn, and someone who wants to like better themselves. I don't want to collaborate with someone who just wants to like piggyback off me, or like someone who just wants to. So that's why I'm like, you know what? You have to be as good as me, or you have to be like, or we have to be like around the same radar, or like the same plane. So it's like when we collaborate, we're utilizing each other as a resource. This goes back to what we said. You know, we're utilizing each other as a resource, and we're helping one another. We're helping the both of us be better. You know. It's a fair exchange. You know. To translate it into a different kind of a term, is that you're both using each other's resources, but it's a fair exchange. It's a basic principle of business, and being an artist and trying to do these sorts of collaboration, even if it's not for money, it is a business. And that's what people don't get, and that's why people get mad and like frustrated when you're like, oh, like, wow, you can't work with me, like, thought you're cool, like, we're just artists, and like I thought we were supposed to help each other out, but like it's really it boils down to being like, this is a business, whether you get money or not. Because like it's a fair exchange. And like I totally vibe with you on that point about the like, are you just trying to ride my coattails, or are you just trying to like use me? Like, what do I get out of it, you know? Like, and that's how I felt with that person I was just mentioning earlier, is that like the way he reached out to me was like, yo, like, so before the meeting, he was like, hey, let's meet up together and let's record. I was like, cool, I'm usually free on Thursdays. That's when I make time for anybody who wants to schedule something. And he was like, yeah, let's record. I was like, record what? And he was like, a song of yours. And I was like, well, I don't have a song right now. But if you wanted to like make a beat, that's cool. It just sounded like he wanted to come in and get free studio time to freestyle and whatnot, and like get his thoughts out. And I'm like,
I'm not. If I was a recording engineer, that's cool. But in my particular situation where I am more than just a recording engineer, because if you just need a recording engineer, that's a job. Yeah, that's cool. But I'm out here trying to be, yes, a recording engineer, a mixing engineer, a mastering, a composer, and I have other projects that I creatively am obligated and entitled towards. And it's just like, I don't know what I get from you freestyling for 2 hours, and you might not get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then hoping that I would slice things up to make it sound cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just doesn't make sense for me as to why I would invest my time. And time is the biggest currency of the world right now, more than money, because with time you can make as much money as you want. So my time is super precious to me. And I'm pretty sure it is to you too.
Yeah, I would say that, and this is like when it goes back to like Spirits Dawn and with Ju, it's like, so for those of you who haven't seen Spirits Dawn, it's an anthology
Go watch
film.
it.
Yeah, it's great. Watch it. It's an anthology film. So there's myself and 3 other directors, and each of them makes about a 20-minute short, and we put it together, and they all are centered around the theme of like Hmong spirituality. So, when we were going to choose like the other directors, like originally I was not supposed to be in there.
Really?
And we had our group of 4 already. We had our people already, and we're like, we're good. We like once we get these guys, like if we do this, like we're good. We don't need anybody else. And so circumstances happened, and one of our filmmakers dropped out, and so we had like an odd number of 3 people. And so we're like, okay, well, we can't have 3 people. 3 thematically it doesn't make sense, because if each film is only 20 minutes, we only get like a 60-minute video. And it's like,
Right.
Are we really gonna rent out a theater for like $5,000 just to show like a 60-minute video? It's like, that doesn't make any sense, So we're like, okay, well, we need a 4th guy. So I was the producer, and I was like, oh, okay, well, like I have this story that I've written, maybe I could just do it. So then so I jumped in, so I became the 4th director in like a weird way. But so when we were choosing our directors, we wanted people who were like, we wanted people whose styles were like different, whose audiences were different, but people who were like around the same, because like, we didn't want someone who was like super good, and then we had someone who was like I wouldn't say bad, but someone who was like not as like polished, and then we have like this huge disparity. Because if you're watching an anthology film, the first one, if the first one was like an A+, and the next one's like a F, you're gonna notice the disparities like right away, and you're gonna be like, am I watching like the same film? Like, am I still in the same theater? Like, what happened? So we knew that. We're like, okay, well, we can't choose people who are like just making a film. We can't choose someone who just made their first film, right? So we needed people who were like pretty skilled, like around the same skill level, people who are like around the same knowledge level, people who were like, in terms of like popularity and like in terms of like attraction, like people who are like close to one another. They don't have to be like exact, but pretty close within one another. And so that was like some of the criteria we were like gauging, because at first when we were like, what we did at first was like, we listed like a whole list of like, hey, who are all the Hmong filmmakers that we know of, like, and who are all the Hmong filmmakers that we think would do this project with us. We had a list of like 15 people, but as we were going down the list, we're like, I think this guy is like probably out of the ballpark. He's probably too good. If we were to get him, his film would just like completely like overshadow like
the rest
of the film, and then that's doing everyone else like a disservice. So it's like, this is not a competition. We're not trying to see who makes a better film. We're trying to tell like a cohesive story of like Hmong spirituality. So it's like every film has to be like complementary to one another in a way. And so we were like, okay, so the list quickly like narrowed down to like 6 people, and like we had like these 6, and then we asked these people, and they're like, no, we don't want to do it, like we don't have time. And so it got smaller and smaller and smaller, and then we got down to the people who were like, yes, let's do it. And so it's it goes back to like what you said of like, hey, like, do you just want to like ride my coattails? Do you just want to like, use my equipment or whatever? So it's like, we didn't want that to be the case where it's just like we get like one big name guy and everyone else is just like riding this guy's like hotel,
Yeah.
because with
Yeah.
especially with film and like with even with music, if like I'll use DJ Khaled for example. It's like if I'm listening to like a DJ Khaled song, like all his music is like DJ Khaled featuring and then whoever else. It's like all these people are like, I like DJ Khaled, so I don't care I don't even read the rest of the names. It's like, oh, it's a DJ Khaled song. I'll listen to it. I'll click on it. I'll listen to it. And it's like, Justin Bieber or like Quavo or like Chance or whoever is on there, they're gonna get exposure because I'm a DJ Khaled fan. I don't listen to Justin Bieber's music, so it's like if it was just Justin Bieber, I wouldn't have clicked on it. I was like,
Oh, man, that new Intention song though.
I mean, I haven't heard it, but I was like, you get what I'm saying though. I wouldn't have clicked on it explicitly if it was Justin Bieber because it was like DJ Khaled. I was like, oh, I like DJ Khaled. I'll click on it. And it's like the same thing with like our film with Spirits Dawn. It's like if, for example, like out of all the art directors, like MK, like she has the most notoriety, so she's the most well known out of all of us in terms of like followers. Like if you look at her like Facebook page, if you look at her YouTube, if you look at anything else, she has like the most views, she has the most subscribers, she has the most of all of us. Maybe she triples the numbers that I do. So it's like in terms of popularity, like MK could overshadow all of us, but that's not the case because even though her numbers are more than us, like our stories are different and our skills are different, our audiences are different. So it's like when we made our anthology film, we knew that like, hey, like if just one person were to headline this, like we probably would get just her audience. So it's like she has her audience, I have mine, Portia has hers, Jur has his, and it's like by combining all of ours together, like our audience was like exponentially grew basically. And so, that is it was a learning experience, and go watch it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it was a big showing for a couple whenever you showed it out to the theaters.
Yep.
A lot of people, they came out.
Yep. Most of our shows were sold out, so it was a good showing.
That's why you're famous.
Not really.
Yeah, you guys are. Oh, I would say you're like a B-lister among famous.
Yeah.
It's always a tricky subject when working with other artists, for sure. Even if you're not doing film, or like if you're not the one directing. I know you've been helping other people shoot some stuff.
Yeah, I would say, and this is advice to the film aspiring filmmakers, is like the one issue that I always hear about, and thank God I haven't come across this, hopefully I don't ever come across this, is like the issue of like the issue of monetary. So it's like if you work with someone and like they agree to pay you, it's like, okay, well, they have to pay you, it's like that doesn't matter, it's like if you do, even if you're only there for like a day or like an hour, whatever it may be, if you say you're going to pay someone, you have to pay them. Or if you agree upon a rate, you have to pay them that rate. It's like that's how relationships like sour really quickly. And being a Hmong filmmaker, our community is like so small that it's like if you make one relationship sour, that's like one avenue that you've destroyed. And when you operate in such like a tight knit community where like everyone knows each other, once you destroy that avenue, that's a resource that you're probably never going to get back. And like I said, most of the time that happens because of monetary, and especially in the Hmong filmmaking community where everyone is like nickeling and diming everyone, because money is scarce in the Hmong filmmaking community. So it's like everyone wants to like nickel and dime. So it's like,
definitely,
if you say you're gonna pay someone, you have to pay them. If you're gonna compensate them, you have to compensate them. That is probably the single biggest issue that I've seen, and the single biggest issue that I've heard about, where people are like, I don't want to work with that person anymore because they promised me they were gonna pay me XYZ.
And they
didn't, or like they gave me half of it, or like they promised me that they were gonna do this and they didn't. So it's like, for all you like aspiring like filmmakers, it's like, stay true to your word. And if you say you're gonna pay someone, yeah, you have to pay them. You know, it's like and that doesn't even have to be with Hmong people. It's like with anybody. You know, it's common sense. But I'm just using the Hmong filmmaking community as an example because that's what I operate in. And so it's like, I haven't had that issue personally before, so hopefully I don't ever have that issue. But it's and when you start out, a lot of times it's gonna be pro bono work. You know, it's like hey, you know, like if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And it's like, and you have to stay true to that too. You know, it's like if you help me on my set, I will help you on your set. Or if you come and help me do this, I will come and help you do that. You know, it's like that's the same thing as like
fair exchange.
Yeah, fair exchange. You know, so it's and if you don't want to do that, just be like, hey, you know what? You're gonna work for free. I'm not gonna pay you. Just be upfront about it. You know, you don't need to be like, I'm gonna pay you, and then like 2 months later, like, I don't have that money. Or like, hey, you know, like, oh, you know, you came to set late, so I'm not gonna pay you. You know, it's like, just be upfront about it. If you're not gonna pay someone, just be like, hey, I'm not gonna pay you, but this is what I can offer you. Or like, hey, I can't pay you, but I will come to your set. Or like, I will do this for you. It's like, you know, just be upfront about it. It's that's how I see and that's how I see like relationships like souring and stuff.
Yeah, but it's also because like it's such a, at least for the artists here, it's a tight knit community where I mean, it doesn't have to be like I feel like I've soured some relationships, like, you know, that moving here that I was opened up to, and then things didn't like follow through, and it sucks. Like I wish those events didn't happen. And it wasn't a monetary thing at all. It was, well, I guess you can say it's monetary, since it was up on YouTube and it got views and things like that. And the channel that put it up was eligible to be like a YouTube partner, the YPP program. And but yeah, it's just like I didn't intend for things to be that way, but it just happened. And then I feel like I soured that kind of like that grape, you know, that branch. And so like I am really actually afraid to go talk to that person again, you know. And you know, we also had a rough patch. I mean, I'm still kind of afraid to talk to you about those things too.
Yeah, you know, I would say that,
but
there are some things that are just like out of your control, though. You know, it's funny because it's not funny, but so I do a lot of like wedding videos too and stuff like that. And so like in like my wedding contract, there's something it's written in there. If anyone who has ever hired me to do their weddings, or anyone who wants to hire me to do their wedding, it's written in there. And I believe it's like line 13. It's like there are acts of God, and that's what it says. There are acts of God that if I cannot control, then, you know, you cannot like sue me for them, you know? And what that means is like, if there's like a fire, or if there's like a tornado, or if it's like, or if I get into a crash, or if someone bumps into my camera and like smashes it or something like that, like while it's recording, and I lose all my footage, it's like, that's an act of God. It's like, I can't control that, you know? There are things that you can't control. And it's like, and I think that I would imagine that if that were to happen to me, the bride and the groom would be really upset. They'd be like, wow, you ruined it. We're never going to get that footage back. You ruined our wedding day for us. And it's like, yes, you have the right to be upset.
Yeah.
But also, that's like an act of God. It's like, how am I to say I won't get into a car crash? Or like, who am I to say that someone won't bump into my camera and it's going to fall off a desk and it's going to smash to the ground? I'm going to lose everything. Like, you know, who's to say that that's not going to happen? Or like, who's to say that I wanted that to happen? You know, so it's like, there are acts of God that happens that you just simply cannot control.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes, you know, you could do as much as you can. You know, you could put your camera on a tripod, you can tape it down, you can like screw everything down, and there are things that will still happen.
Get the gaffing tape.
Yeah, exactly. You could gaff that. You could do everything in your power to try to make that not happen. And if something happens to it, it's like out of your hands. Like, you know, it's like an act of God. That's why it's you know, it's if it's ruined, it's like, you know, so what I'm trying to get at is, if that were to happen, yes, I've done all the precautionary work that I could have done.
Right.
But at that point, in that instance, that's out of my hand. There's
Yeah.
literally nothing I can do, right? So it's like, it's on the bride and the groom to be like, hey, you know what? Like, you're right. You know, there's nothing you could have done. You know, if I was just laying my camera down, didn't care about it, let it like lackadaisically like lay it down here and like walked off and was drinking a beer or something like that, and
Yeah.
someone knocked it over, then they could be like, hey, you know what? Like, you weren't taking care of your stuff. Now you ruined our wedding. Now that's my fault, right? But if
Yeah.
you've done everything you could do and it's just out of your hand, it's like, now it's up to the bride and the groom to be like, hey, you know what? We forgive you, or like, hey, we don't forgive you. And at that point, like, for me, honestly, if that were to happen, it's happened once to me, actually. So if that were to happen,
Wow.
I'd just be like, whatever, yo, like, there's nothing I could do. So I'll tell you, it's a quick story too.
Yeah.
But wait, how long are we going to?
It doesn't matter, dude. Mine's with my podcast. My episode with Lizelle was 2 hours long.
Oh, okay. Probably
Up
get
to
out
you.
here in like 10 minutes or something.
Okay. Yeah.
So the story goes, I was recording a wedding, and the day before every wedding, I always go to a sound check. I always go to a sound check. I always go to a location check. Every single wedding I've been to, I always do that.
Okay.
And so I went to this place. I did a sound check. I did everything. Everything was good. And then the day of the wedding, they switched it up because their central mic system died the day of the wedding.
Oh, man.
Yep. And so now they brought in like these two portable like speakers with one mic was hooked up to one, the other mic was hooked up to the other one. So it was like two different systems and had two different mics. And then so I told the groom, and I was like, hey, you know, I don't remember what his name was. This is a really long time ago. I was like, hey, you know, this is not going to work because I can only take in like one input to like my recorder. So it's like, you have two different systems. It's like, you choose who you want me to record. Like, so what their setup was, they had one mic on the pastor reading the vows, and then they had the second mic in front of the bride and the groom. And so I was like, you choose like, who do you want? Like, if you want me to keep it on you guys, I will take your input, but we're gonna lose the pastor. If you want me to keep it on the pastor, we're gonna lose you guys, and we're not gonna hear you say I do or say your vows to one another.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, keep it on us. So I was like, that's what my guess was too. I was like, you know what, the pastor's important, but I would rather hear your vows than, you know, whatever the pastor's gonna say, you know.
Right.
So I took their input, and then like I cut everything together, I delivered it to them, and they're like, hey, we can't hear the pastor. And I was like, I told you this. I was like, I told you to choose. It's like, it's one or the other at this point, because that's out of my control. You know, it's like,
Right.
the system broke the day of. You wheeled in these two new things at the last minute. The wedding was like delayed by like 20 minutes just for you to like find these like two. It was at a hotel too, so like the hotel had to like wheel in these two separate speakers. And I was like, well, this is like essentially an act of God. You know, it's like, I didn't break your sound system. It's like, I didn't decide you guys to wheel up, you know.
Right.
The ideal solution was, you know, the pastor just goes like this, use one mic system and just, you know, pass it around. It's like, that's an act of God. It's like, I have nothing to do. And then so they got mad, and they're like, hey, you know, like, we can't hear the pastor, like, totally ruined our video, like, we're unhappy with it, like, we want to hear him because like the pastor's like the really like close friend, or it's like a family friend, so he's like really important. And I was like, and I was like, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't, once it's recorded, I cannot go back and add his voice in. It's like, that's impossible unless you want me to ADR this, you know. And so I was like, I cannot do that. And they're like, well, we're really upset, you know, what can you do about this? I'm like, there's nothing I can do. Literally, there's nothing I can do. And it's like, I will like try my best to like, you know, you could hear his voice, but it's very, very low because obviously he's far back. Their mic is picking him up. And I was like, there's nothing I can do. And so they're really upset. But at that point, I was just like, you know what? Like, I would feel guilty if
you were the one who
I was the one who fucked it up.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't feel bad because it's like, that sounds really mean. I don't feel bad, but at the same time, it's like I don't feel guilty because it's like none of this was my fault, and I was like, I did everything in my power. I asked you to choose like who you thought was more important, and to me, honestly, hearing your vows, to me, was more important because I guarantee you that if I were to mic the pastor up and did not hear their vows, they would be 10 times more pissed. They would be like, you can't even hear us. You can't even hear any of our vowels. And I'm like, you know, it was like a lose-lose situation. And I kind of anticipated that when that happened already. So I was like, whatever. So I didn't feel bad. I was like, whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, since you gonna head out soon, before you go, where can people find you, find your stuff?
Yeah. So I'm kind of all over the place, but you guys can find me on Facebook. It's under Dan Ya. I have 2 pages. One is W&C Productions. That's kind of my passion project short film page where I post a lot of like my short films. And then I have Cross Stitch Media. That's like my business page where I do a lot of like commercial work and stuff like that. So you can find me on either page. I would say right now I'm more active on like Cross Stitch because that's kind of where the majority of my work is coming. But I'm working on this project right now called Rice Street, and that is going to be coming out hopefully by spring. We're almost done, but that will be kind of my new thing I'm working on now. So yeah, that's what's coming up. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you guys know me. You can find me at every platform on soon to be Spotify. I've been having issues with posting the podcast up there, but SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. When the music gets put up there, you can find me on Amazon, Google Play, and all those other areas at TabooThao. Again, this is TabooTalks, where we come here, talk about anything controversial under the sun, to increase my own perspective and hopefully everybody listening in or watching, to expand our horizons so that we can put the human perspective on everything, so we can become more holistic people.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Cool.
That closes it.